In today's video, what I wanted to do is go through step by step what I would do if I came into a significant, and I mean significant amount of money. I'm not talking 1 to 2 million, I'm talking $5–10 million plus. I've been quite lucky that in my life I've met a couple of significant lottery winners. I've also met countless other people which have sold businesses or real estate and have come into large sums of money. But when you actually go online and look it up, there is not a lot of information about what you should do. And I thought I would create this video for two reasons, not 4 reasons, because it's a way of doing an open book. And if the advice is bad, you can call me out in the comment section. The second reason is it is often a multi-year process to set all your structures and everything up correctly. So what I want to do is simplify and just create a step-by-step process that you can follow in a couple of weeks to do what normally takes a couple of years. It goes without saying that this is not any form of personal financial advice. This is just general advice. And by going past this point in the video, you agree to be bound by the terms and conditions which have been linked in the description section of this video. The first steps of what you must do is actually a list of things which you should not do once the money hits your bank account. And step number 1 is quit your job. If you want to take some time off to have a breather, take leave. You may stay with your job if you enjoy it, or you might reassess things. So this can be done at a later stage. Then despite all the excitement, it is important not to tell anyone. I'm not saying don't tell anyone at all, but have a think about who you tell down the track and do it once the excitement settles. If the payment is given to you on a lump sum or a terms basis, so a lump sum is when everything gets given to you day one, and a payout basis is it gets chopped up into installments and paid over time. Always, despite what the lottery blogs all say, accept it in a lump sum, because provided you do responsible things with your finances from day one, you more than likely will be in a much better position long term. Then make sure that you holster your checkbook, or more figuratively, your credit card stays in your pocket. Don't buy dumb stuff. I'm not saying don't ever buy dumb stuff, but buy stuff off the income stream from the capital that you've received, not by the capital itself, because it diminishes your ability to earn an income in the future. And that rounds out the final point, which is never give the principal away. Do not give it away to family, do not give it away to friends. I'm not saying don't give them money, just don't give them the principal. If you receive returns off that principal, you can then for perpetuity give them money, because it will never disappear as long as you're earning an interest or a return on that principal. Let me be clear on my never giving away principal. Basically, you have a large sum of money and you are generating an investment return of it. If you give away 20, 30 or 50% of that principal, you need to increase your returns by 2 times the amount of what you gave away. So for example, if you're generating a 6% return on $10 million and you give away half of that $10 million, that means to generate the same return on $5 million, you need to generate 6, double that, 12% to achieve the same gross return. This means in the investment world, you're taking more risk and the likelihood of losing that principal increases. So what I would encourage you to do is to keep the principal, get a fair return for your money, and then give away the income, because this way you'll have the money forever, for generation after generation after generation. Whereas if you give away the principal, it will come to an end. At this point, what a lot of people would say is do not trust a random dude like me off the internet. Go and seek professional advice. And look, I do encourage you to do that to a point, but what I encourage you to do is a little bit differently. Firstly, go and use some of the tools online to find a range of different independent financial advisors and speak to a couple up front. Don't tell them your exact situation around the windfall. Get an understanding of their fee structure, how they do things, and then after this point, you can meet with them again. Geez, if they want to charge you for a couple $100 to meet with them again, that's fine. And you can then tell them the full situation and see, does their fee structures change, who they are, does the investment methods change, and how is it different? Then I would question them on why it has changed and make sure you hold them accountable. This tip goes for all advisors, whether it be lawyers for estate planning, whether it be accountants for structuring, whether it be financial planners, and anyone else that is giving you that advice. Then if you haven't already, call up your bank and set up a high interest savings account. If you haven't got the money already, give the BSB an account number of the high interest savings account. And the reason for that is the interest accruals as soon as the money is transferred to that account, rather than getting routed through your everyday account that you use. If The other thing is, don't be too stressed as to if your bank has the best rate, because this is only going to be a temporary holding place for the money until you have set up the correct structures, which I will discuss a little bit later in this video. While the money is in your high interest bank account, the next thing which you would be encouraged to do is speak to an accountant. And it's similar to a financial planner. Chat to a different couple of accountants, get an understanding of what they do and the costs involved. It's worthwhile noting that if you have an existing accountant, that might be okay, but if they do basic tax return stuff, this might not be suitable to set up all the correct structures. An account which might be more suited is a small business account, whereby they understand structuring, they understand trusts and a range of other matters. The way I do this is to type into Google small business accountant, and I would look at page 2 or 3 of Google. The reason for this is page 1 is crammed full of accountants that are hungry for business, they're growing, and often they pay for marketing, they pay for SEO, and that gets them to the top of Google. This also means that their fees have to recoup the cost of marketing. Whereas on page 2 or 3, these accountants often produce good content, they still rank fairly high in Google, but you may find that their fees are less expensive. The other pro tip for financial planners and accountants is to avoid groups. And what I mean by that is, instead of just being really good in accounting and that's all you do, they start to group into other professional services. So you have an accounting that also does financial planning, which also does mortgage broking. And the reason for this is they'd commonly cross-refer you between those individual services that they offer. What I would encourage is a better way to assure accountability is have an independent financial planner to an accountant, and this way you can ask questions to one contact and confirm those questions and answers with the other contact. And the final thing to do while you're at the accountant is to subscribe to my channel and share this channel to them, because this way it will give me a warm fuzzy feeling of another subscriber, which will encourage me to make more of this content. Once you've selected an account, one of the first discussions that they'll have with you is setting up a structure. And one of the most common structures that they set up is a discretionary or family trust. You can be trustee of this trust personally, or you can set up a company that acts as a trustee of the trust. The accountant can discuss with you the pros and cons of each of these options. If your accountant has recommended that you set up a company as trustee for your family trust, I've got a couple of little extra tips, general tips that I want to share with you. Firstly, naming of that company and trust. I would go for a fairly mundane, basic name that doesn't necessarily relate to you personally. And the reason for that is if you own shares and property and other investments, this can be commonly public record, which means people can track it back to your own personal name. Now, I know you can pull company records and find out who the directors and shareholders are, but by having a company name, it just creates one extra added layer of privacy. The other thing worth mentioning is around directorships and shareholders. So if your spouse and you both want to be directors on the family trustee, this means you'll both need to execute every single document, every single bank account, every single tax file, everything together. And for some people, that's fine. It's commonly easier to have one sole director that executes everything that company does and is legally liable for decisions that that company undertakes. And then you have a will set up where you deal with situations in the event of death or incapacitation of that director. Also, while we're setting up the family trust, it may be also worthwhile setting up a different email address which relates solely to the family trust. This way, all your documents are stored in one place, and also it creates another layer of privacy. You could also consider a PO box, and this way your address is kept private too. This is the perfect segue onto my next topic, which is estate planning. And I don't care how boring this topic is or how fit you are, you need to seriously consider it. And it's not just for you, it's also for your spouse. And if you have adult kids and they're a beneficiary on your will and they have dependents, they need to consider their estate planning as well. What is estate planning? Well, it relates to wills, testamentary trusts, enduring power of attorneys, and the succession plan of your family trust and any other entities which you have set up. Because we're dealing with a bit of money, estate planning can be a little bit more complex, because not only do you have more structures now set up, also you have to consider the event of waterfall. So not just what happens to you, but what happens to you and your spouse. If you have adult kids and they have dependents, what happens if you, your spouse, and also one of the parents of the kids disappear? Because ultimately you want to make sure that you are setting it up in a way that you can look after future generations. Any lawyer can write a will, but what I'd encourage you to do is speak to a specialist lawyer that deals solely in writing wills. And the reason for this is they're familiar with how wills should be structured, and also they do it day in, day out. The other thing is they often have a structure, and for this reason it's often cheaper to get a specialist will provider over just a general lawyer to write up a will on your behalf. It's common for will specialists to provide you a fixed fee quote up front, front rather than charging you on an hourly rate basis. And I encourage you, because you are dealing with a bit of money, this is not a space to DIY, because there is a lot of interrelated factors that can impact wills. And now that there's money involved, there is a catalyst or a reason for people to consider challenging that will. Now that you've got your account structures, tax file number and wills, you can start considering what you actually do with that money. And the first thing to consider is setting up a bank account in the trust and moving it out of your personal name into the trust. So let's get into setting up the bank accounts. Me being super paranoid, I want to chop my money up in at least 4 different ways. What I would consider is a cash account, a 6-month term deposit, a 9-month term deposit, and a 12-month term deposit. The reason why you want to get term deposits and term deposits with longer terms is because firstly, you're not going to deploy all the capital in day one. So this gives you a staggered cash flow. And the second reason is you get higher rates on longer term deposits. And this means that you can slightly blend up your returns on money which you aren't going to need straight away. Also, you don't want to be setting up 4 different accounts with one bank. You want to set up one account with 4 different banks. The reason for this is because the government only guarantees $250,000 with one bank. The other thing which you need to be mindful of, in Australia, a lot of banks like St. George is owned by Westpac, for example, and Bankwest is owned by CBA. So Finder has actually got a really good tool to tell you which banks are related subsidiaries to their parent company. That is important because the $250,000 guarantee which the government gives only relates to one parent entity. So if you had money with Westpac and St. George and both of them went broke, you would effectively only get $250,000 from one of those banks. How do you pick the banks? Well, Google term deposit comparison websites. They will give you an understanding of which banks are offering the best rates for different term deposits and cash accounts. So the fine print can go 2 ways. Firstly, some banks offer a bonus for more money, and some banks actually penalize more money. So just make sure that the rate that the bank is offering is correct and accurate for the amount of money which you are considering depositing. All of those certified IDs, which you got one of the accountants to do at the start, is coming in handy now because the banks are going to require them to set up all of the bank accounts. While you're sending off all this money to different term deposits, the next thing you want to do is put up calendar reminders about a week out from when all these term deposits expire, because if you let them expire and don't tell the bank on what you want to do with the money, it will often sit with the bank at a significantly reduced interest rate. The next administrative task is setting up a portfolio tracker. Basically, it's a complicated word for an Excel document which outlines what the investment is, how much is invested, who's the key point of contact to action anything about that investment, any notes that relate to it, and a review date, a date at which you're going to review that investment again. The reason being is if you've got 10 or 20 investments, it can be quite hard to manage it. And also if something happens to you, someone can step into the portfolio quite quickly and manage it on your behalf. While you are in Excel, the next thing you want to do is work out all your assets, such as your house, car, superannuation, etc., and your liabilities, personal loans, credit card, car loans, whatever it might be. So you know exactly what all your liabilities are. Once you have all of these liabilities in front of you, the next thing you want to do is call up the credit providers, ask them a couple of things. Firstly, the interest rate they're charging you. Then you want to ask them if there's any early repayment fees. And finally, if you have to pay the interest till the end of the term, or does the interest end today if you pay off the loan today? Because in car loans and a lot of other fixed term loans, it's quite common that no matter how early you pay off the debt, you will still then have to pay the full interest till the end of the term. So there's no point in that money leaving your bank account, not earning your interest, and you're also paying them the privilege of them getting their money sooner. The final bookkeeping exercise is to go back through your last 12 months of spending and work out how much you actually spend, because it's quite common to have creep. Basically, as you have more money, you spend more money. And this is an exercise in checking yourself before you wreck yourself, because as people have more money each consecutive year, they spend more to a point that their spending is unsustainable. Now that you have all your debts in front of you, it's worthwhile paying back any debt that doesn't have any early repayment penalties, as well as any debt that you don't have to pay the interest to the end of the term. With your mortgage, it's worthwhile discussing a few extra points. Firstly, with fixed rate mortgages, it's more than likely you'll have to pay the interest off till the end of the term, and for that reason, it's probably not worthwhile paying it off sooner. If you have an offset account or access to an offset account, it might be better to use your money to fully offset the offset account. This way you're not accruing interest, but there will still be fees for having that facility open. The benefit is you'll be able to draw that money back out of your property and do things with it should you want to at a later date. Whereas if you pay off the facility in full, This means you'll need to reapply for a loan if you want to draw out some money from your property. At this point, you've got your structures set up correctly. It doesn't matter if a bus hits you, and you have your money defensively put into a range of different banks. You're ready to start considering investing. So until you find that great next investment or my next video, best of luck and goodbye.